Hello. So what I'm going to do today is to go ahead and cover a topic that is pretty controversial among the retro gaming community, and that is whether or not a person should use a reproduction front label on their cartridge-based video game. So anyways, there's a lot of just very, very polarized and very, very different views on this. And so I'm going to go ahead and kind of cover the extremes and then cover kind of where I'm at as far as my stance on it. And ultimately, it is a personal decision. And you just kind of have to decide to do what's best for your situation and your circumstance. So, if you go on a various different forums, groups, Reddit, wherever you might go to go and talk to folks in the retro gaming community, if you bring up anything reproduction related, you're going to find two very polarized views on it. And reproduction labels are no exception on this. So I've seen, the people who will go and, they'll get the tiniest little nick on their original label and they'll go ahead and strip it off and put a clean reproduction label on there. Personally, I think that's a pretty boneheaded move, just because you're destroying something that is going to, make very little difference in the collector value of the game, and inherently hurting the value for a very minor cosmetic flaw. So, in situations like that, there's no way on earth I would ever use a reproduction label, so I'll just come right out and say that. But on the flip side, I've seen the other extreme where you get, these guys are like, I'm going to say it, they're militant about it. Borderline whack job is what I'm going to call them. And they will sit there and scream at you if you have the tiniest little bit of adhesive or little semblance of scrap of paper left from an otherwise destroyed label. They'll sit there and yell at you and say, you should keep it. You should never even think about touching reproduction labels. They're all trash. They're worthless. They're going to destroy the value of the game, and you're a terrible person for ever even thinking about it. These people, don't listen to them because they're idiots. I'm sorry I'm going to say that because, just nasty human beings. My stance on that is that, if you're reaching the point where the original label is looking something like this guy right here. That is an original that I picked up of Banjo-Tooie. And this was only the tip of the iceberg, by the way, when it came to this case. It's so faded and destroyed, you can barely make out what it is. And it's already worn down to the gray in several different parts on the cartridge there. When a label gets this far gone, I have no problem whatsoever doing a reproduction label, just because, in my opinion, any argument for the authenticity of the artwork is gone once it reaches this kind of a stage. Not to mention that when I got it, here was the back, with the back label totally missing. So literally, there's nothing to salvage there. In addition to that, this game also had, sorry, I just dropped that, also had rust forming on the inside, which was starting to spread to the original game board. So I would say this is a pretty extreme case, but this is one of only two cases where I have actually gone and replaced the label, and I actually did a full recase on this one. Fortunately, I had a DOA, just a dead, cheap sports game, so I just repurposed the cartridge casing on it, so I still have an authentic OEM cartridge case on it. The other thing is that if you take a look here, they have these little tabs where things hook into them. As you can see there, this one's intact, this one's broken. And, the inner protective metal cartridge casing actually had some rust forming on it as well. Bottom line, it had a great working game board, but it was basically cosmetically destroyed as far as I'm concerned. And I would still say even the most adamant purist would have a hard time arguing with that, because that's something that actually threatens the functionality of the game if the rust spreads. So what I ended up doing was, yes, this is a reproduction front label. And I'm sorry, nobody's ever going to convince me that in this case that I am worse off with this than I am with this piece of crap right here. Okay? I still have the original, for the super anal collectors. If that ever comes up at some point in the future, I could say, here you go. Here's your broken piece of trash right there. But anyways, as you can see there, and this is an authentic OEM case because, as I said, I repurposed it from a sports game. And as you can see, it has a very nice back label on there that's original. So anyways, this is one of two cases where I ended up salvaging and rehabilitating the game and doing a reproduction label because as I said, that's just too far gone, and the case was just too far gone in general and was actually threatening the game board itself with the spread of rust. The next one that I did, this one was Yoshi's Story. This is a reproduction front label, but the rest of the game, once again, 100% authentic. What ended up happening was the original was literally the whole label was totally gone, and it was down to the white paper underbacking on it. And somebody had taken a Sharpie marker and written Yoshi's Story on it. Sorry, purists, but that's a destroyed label. There's nothing to salvage there. And of course, the back label on that one was also basically, it was ripped down to the white paper, so there was nothing to see there. So this one, once again, another DOA sports game, had a bunch of those. Ended up repurposing the cartridge case, and so this is, once again, it's 100% authentic other than just the front reproduction label. But in this case, as I said, I have no issue whatsoever using a reproduction case. Now, the flip side to that is, like I said, some people freak out and do reproduction labels when there's barely any damage to the original artwork, which, as I said, I think that's boneheaded. I would not condone or recommend that in any way, shape, or form. So here are some examples of some ones where I've said there's no point in doing a reproduction label. This is mine, a Banjo-Kazooie. As you can see, it's got a little bit right there. But generally speaking, that's an intact label. So in my opinion, there's no point in doing a reproduction label on something like this. That's a lot of work for something that it honestly just shouldn't be done or wasting your time with. And it's only going to inherently bring down the value of the game. This one was one that was kind of borderline for me. This one's like right at that tipping point. I'm still on the fence with what I'm going to do with this one. What I may end up doing is kind of like the other one where I just recase it and then save the original case for the people who are just really adamant about being 100% authentic. But thus far, I've just kind of left it as is and said, why not? So anyways, those are probably the kind of the extreme end of what I consider passable for an original to just go ahead and leave the original label. And as I said, this one's really kind of borderline for me. The other one, and I am going to bring this one up just to give you an idea of some of the fanatical folks you're going to find out there. I had one guy who told me that he had one that was literally like this, stripped down to the gray cartridge casing, and somebody had taken a Sharpie and written the name on there. And he said, that's authentic. That's idiot logic at its finest, folks. I'm sorry I'm going to say that. Because it's one of those situations where, I mean, seriously, how on earth are you going to be able to argue that somebody writing a Sharpie on there is better than a reproduction label on a blank gray case like this that doesn't even identify what the game is? That's a case where, as I said, go ahead and put a reproduction label. If you've got it down to the gray case, I mean, seriously, what are you trying to salvage there? So anyways, that's kind of my take on it, is that the truth of the matter is that it is a personal preference, but at the same time, I do think you do need to use a little common sense and logic there, where you say, okay, labels with more minor cosmetic damage, go ahead and let them be. But if you got a situation where somebody's trying to convince you that one tiny little corner of the original artwork when you're talking like, you know, covering less than 10% of the cartridge, and you have to save that because otherwise, you know, you're going to destroy the value of the game. I'm sorry, that there's no logic or rational reasoning behind that whatsoever. The bottom line is, as said, try and stay authentic as much as possible, but at some point, you know, there is a tipping point where you can make a legitimate case to say, hey, look, you know, in this case, a reproduction front label is not going to hurt anything because the original is so far gone. There's just nothing to salvage there. And anyways, that's all I've got, and thanks for watching.